That was a taste choice. That was like me choosing something that I liked.
And we're back. Blacklights Podcast live in the studio. New look. It's beautiful behind us. I got your girl, Lachey Boone McCray. I got my guy here, Dion Walcott. And guys, we got some straight up talent in the building with us. We have Miss Kari Faux with us today. We have to do it like we normally do it because I think it's just so important for people to hear just your journey. So take us through just even how you got your start in just the music industry.
So I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas, and if you know anything about Arkansas, there is no music industry. Right. There is not too much of anything like entertainment-wise that's happening there. So I was lucky to be born in the generation that had the internet. Gotcha. And so I used the internet to basically get my music out there. I had a group of friends where we started recording music around the age of like 15, 16. And we just kind of put it on MySpace, put it on Facebook, then Twitter started popping. And so then I started meeting people from different cities and places I had never been because I didn't really travel a lot, like when I was a kid. And so like, I just put it out there. People were responding to it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to find a way to get to these places, right? So I signed myself up for school. So I went to the Art Institute of Atlanta.
Okay.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I was like, Atlanta is where music is happening,
yes.
right?
Okay.
And so then I was like kind of on that scene of like the Trinidad James, like around that era.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'm just gonna keep like putting it out there. And for a moment, I'm not gonna lie, I took maybe like a year or two off because I was like, nobody really cares what a black girl from Arkansas has to say. But then I was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna keep going. I kept going, and then I made this song called No Small Talk. And Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, found the song, and he was like, can I remix this? And I was like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And so then it kind of, everything just kind of became like a ripple effect after that. So
that's what's up.
That's dope.
Those are big names.
I know.
Yeah.
He just found it.
He just found it. Was it like just through social media? Or
so so at the time, like No Small Talk was like, it had a life of its own. Like people were playing it in parties. Right. And then I had like, so I used to be lying to get into like certain like buildings. So I don't know if you're familiar with Noisy. And so I went up to the Noisy building one time and I told them that I had a meeting with the guy. I think his name was like Drew Milliard at the time, and he was like the head of music. And so I was like, yeah, I have a meeting with him. And they were like, okay, cool. They let me go in, and two guys come back and they're like, oh, Drew's not here. He doesn't have anything on his calendar either. I was like, oh, I lied. I just have a song coming out. It's called No Small Talk, and I want y'all to premiere it.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay. And they was like, what's your name? And I told the guy my name, and he was like, oh, I actually saw you at South by Southwest.
Wow.
And so I used to do, so here's the thing about being from the place where I am. I had to be extremely resourceful.
Absolutely.
At all times.
Right.
And so I would work jobs, and I would work them for like a week, 2 weeks, get enough money, and then I would go down to South by, go down to Austin, and do a performance or just meet people that I needed to know.
Yeah.
Like writers and just like tastemakers in the blog sphere. And so, yeah, basically I just did that, and No Small Talk just kind of took a life of its own on the internet.
When it first hits that like, yo, I actually caught it, right? How does that feel? Like, does it feel like real, or is it?
I think I didn't realize what was happening. Like I always tell people, like when people are like, oh, you know, were you always striving to like be in music or be in the industry? And I'm like, no, I was just doing what I loved and what felt right. And I was just kind of following my internal compass.
Right.
And I'll like look up one day and this is my job.
And you got it.
You know, it's like, oh, I'm paying taxes now. Like,
yeah,
this
absolutely.
This
absolutely.
Is
that's when you know it's real.
Yeah, like, oh, this is really my job.
And
so when it like, in hindsight, I'm like, oh man, like these were the moments that kind of like, you know, lined everything up. But in the moment, I was just like, yeah, like, okay, let's go. Like this happening, let's do it. Like, you want to remix the song? Cool. There were some other people that wanted to remix the song, Drake, and I turned it down. I turned it down because I felt like I really wanted to control like my trajectory, and I feel at that time like he was remixing a lot of people's songs, and I feel like that would have took me too high, too fast.
Shout out to you for
I was
that.
21, 22. I'm like, I didn't know myself. Like, I'm 32 now. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, we got a good grasp on who we are as a person. But I knew that at that time, like, I was just having fun. And I didn't want that to, like,
next thing you know,
overshadow.
Skyrocket.
Yeah.
It's dope that you continue to just follow your passion. And then that's what helps you navigate where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Turning down Drake sounds crazy. Probably listen to this like, yo, you turned down Drake, what? But shout out to you for that.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's like, you know, Drake is an amazing artist, but I just wanted to be able to, like, really, I didn't want people to lose sight of me in that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it's like, when you have somebody that's that massive, you know, like, people will love the song, but then they'll love it for Drake and not me. And then they'll never, like, follow up with me and what I have going on.
Yeah.
How has being in the South influenced your music?
So, I mean, growing up in the South, I have a brother that's like 10 and a half years older than me. So, so whatever a teenager was listening to in the 90s, I was sneaking in his room, like, going through his CD, you know, like the little CD, little books.
The books.
Yeah, and so I used to go through there, and he had like a lot of UGK and like Devin the Dude, and so I was like Outkast, but I was like listening to that stuff, and it just felt like very vivid storytelling, and it was very like smooth and slow, and I think that I've like kind of taken that approach with my own music, but also just like that I feel like life in the South can be slow, and you know, living in bigger cities where there is a major industry, it's always like you gotta go, go. Like, and living there, I realized like I was just overwhelmed and tired, and I moved back home, and I was like, I had to kind of retrain myself that I'm not in a rush, and so that's the approach that I take with the music. That's the approach that I try to take with life, because like what's for me will find me no matter like. But I have to take my time.
Absolutely.
Because when I'm rushing, I forget things. I'm not being thorough, or I may not even be authentic because I'm just trying to hustle and get to where I'm going. So I really like to take my time.
So how long have you, would you say, been doing music?
Been doing music professionally, I would say it would be 10 years, since 2014.
Has your creative process evolved over time, or how has it changed?
For sure. I think in the beginning, I was just trying to make things that, like, cause I feel like when you're first starting out, you're looking at everything externally, right? And so you're looking at like, oh, okay, like my favorite artist makes this type of music, so I'm gonna do that because that works for them, right?
Yeah.
And I think over time, I just started to understand that like my story and my life is just as interesting, if not more interesting than like,
it's your story.
Know, money, cars, clothes, you know, the whole thing. And so I started to go internal with my music, and I started to like really just journal and write and take those thoughts, like really revisit those thoughts when I go to the studio, and then take those thoughts and be like, okay, this is a song. Instead of just like writing to a beat. I'm not an artist that like sits in the studio every single day. Like I like to live for like 9 months out of the year, and then 3 months I'm like, all right, I'm locking in and I'm making an album, because I spent so much time like creating what the theme is or what the idea around the project is.
That's dope. I know when we we always have conversations with our guests even prior to even starting the podcast, and one of the things that you were speaking about earlier that I thought was super dope is, you know, we came in like, what you listening to right now? Dion asked the question like, what's the playlist? And you know, you're like, honestly, anything at this point, like, it's nothing with words. So I thought that was super dope. Is there any particular reason as to why?
This may sound crazy, but like music to me is really, 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 really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that like when we think about ingesting things, like we think about like, you know, some people are vegan or some people are vegetarian. They're like, I don't want to eat this, and this. I feel the same way about music. Yeah. I feel the same way because I understand that like at a certain point in my life, I was listening to nothing but rap music. And then I saw how that influenced like my attitude towards the world. Right? And then like I started listening to like alternative rock, and then I started to see how that influenced like my style or like how I view the world. And so I'm just trying to be like more mindful of what I'm ingesting. And I'm not gonna lie, I just feel like music has changed, like the content of music, mainstream music has changed so much.
It has.
And some of that stuff I just don't wanna I
No.
just don't want it in my spirit.
Yeah.
You don't want to ingest it.
I just don't want it in my spirit.
Yeah.
And so
And I think it's dope too, because it's kind of keeping you clear-minded, where you're not impacted by anybody else's sound or anybody else's, what else is going mainstream. It's like you're staying true to yourself. And
yeah, and I had to be able to like hear, like I had to be able to like get the downloads from spirit and my spirit guides that are like, okay, this is the way you need to go. But if I'm clouding my ears, it's too much. And then it's like, then you got social media. It's like, I'm tired of y'all opinions. Be quiet. Everybody be quiet.
Yeah.
Through all that clutter, it's hard.
Yeah.
For sure. It feels like, women are getting a lot more shine in music these days, right? At least to me, that's what it feels like. I feel like you're part of that movement for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. How does it feel? Like, for sure.
It feels really good. Like, I think that like when I was coming up, especially like during the blog era, there were very few like women that I feel like were doing their thing. And then you had Nicki Minaj, who's at the top, right? And so I think it's really cool to just feel like there's just so many women coming in that like that are telling their stories with their own voice, raw and unfiltered. And I think that that's really cool, and I'm just glad to be able to like be a part of that and witness that in this lifetime. Like we need more. And I'm glad that I get to like tell my story, because like I said in the beginning, I was like, I'm a little black girl from Arkansas. Like, nobody cares what I have to say, but they do.
Yeah, they do.
I know, you got your own story.
Yeah.
Just kind of like piggybacking off of that question, if there was a space that you would love to disrupt as a woman, what space would it be in music?
And so honestly, to be honest, I think my next direction that I'm gonna go in is like the funk space.
Gotcha.
I love that.
Yeah, because like I'm a descendant of George Clinton. Like,
that line.
Like that's my sonic lineage, and I think that like I've been steering away from really doing the thing. Because so I'm not technically or classically trained at anything, right? Everything that I do is just from how I feel. And so when I get around musicians and they're like saying all these like different things, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what they're talking about. So it makes me feel like I'm not supposed to be in the room. But that's not always true. Like I feel like as long as you can communicate a feeling, musicians who are not pretentious, who are really like, they're very kind people, so they'll guide you and help you and
it's
teach
a process too,
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that I really just want to jump into the funk space.
What I really loved about what you said earlier is like you continue to live life. And I think it's cool because like that's where the actual music comes from, when you continue to live. Because people forget, right? Like I always tell a joke.
It's like, the story.
I got enough content now for an album. That's what I say every day when I work here, because crazy shit happens.
And the thing is I feel like you can't grow as an artist if you're not growing as a person.
You still got to continue to live. Yeah, for sure.
Shout out to Adidas, who's even sponsoring. But how did that like collab even happen? Like,
so it actually came through an agency named Colorway. They reached out and they were like, hey, we're doing like influencer like a campaign. We would love to have you a part of it. And I was like, I love Adidas. When I was in elementary school, we only wear uniforms, right? So nobody's being different. So I get to middle school, and I don't know too many people who had great middle school experiences, because I know I didn't. So we didn't like come from a lot of money, and my mom was like, all right, we gonna go to the yard sale, we gonna go to Goodwill, but she would always get me like new shoes. And so we would go to the shoe store, and she'd be like, okay, what shoes do you want? And this is like 2003, 2004, so you can imagine what shoes were the thing back then. And so I was just like, I want those. She's like, no, you can't have those, too expensive. She's like, find something else. So I'm like walking around the store, and I see the Samoas. They were like black, like I think they were like black leather with like the little suede toe and with the blue stripes. And I was like, I want those. And so I go to school, everybody's wearing whatever the trendiest thing is, but I'm wearing like something that's different from everybody else. That was a moment that I realized that like that was a taste choice.
Yep.
That was like me choosing something that I liked.
Right. Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with what was trendy.
Any type of influence.
And I wore those shoes out. Like I wore those shoes out. And so to me, like that moment with those Adidas shoes kind of like, I guess kind of like helped me understand that like I don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And you know, like Adidas is all about being original and authentic, and they've always been fun. Their collaborations have always been fun. So I think.
So what you got on today?
I got on some Andy Martinez. He is an artist from New York, and he takes shoes and he puts cowboy boot.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, and so he made these for me custom.
That's dope.
And so I had to step.
No, those are clean too, though.
Thank you.
I seen them earlier. I was like, oh.
I know. I was trying to.
At first, I thought I didn't know how it all came to be, so I'm happy she asked.
Yeah, I'm a big like hat girl, and right now, my go-to is like dresses and skirts.
Okay.
I haven't always been a dress. Yeah. Because I'm like a tomboy. Yeah. But now I'm like, okay, I love like layering things, and I feel like dresses and skirts allow me to do that in a really cool way. I really believe that like I wear the clothes. Like the clothes they don't wear me.
Yeah, labels
they don't wear me.
Yeah.
No, that's real. Advice question, because a lot of people just, your journey is super interesting in that like you did it your way. But a lot like what you said about Drake is like that's real advice for people. Like don't skip stages.
Yeah.
Right? What advice would you give to somebody, whether it's man, woman, child, that wants to get into the industry?
I would say like be yourself. And I know everybody says that, but like whatever feels good and right to you, like do that. Like really let your internal compass really guide you. Always have a lawyer.
That's great advice.
Your own lawyer.
Not
a lawyer that was
represented by your
own lawyer. And always remember that like when it comes to like working with other like bigger artists, like remember yourself first. Like remember that like you want people to be interested in you and not who you're working with. Because like you said, the skipping steps part, like people be like, oh, I need to go get a big feature, and it's like, no, not all the time. Yeah. Like sometimes you need to just focus on your sound.
I love that you always highlight like don't skip stages, because like that's who you are. Build it slow, you know. Sometimes fast too, but like to your point earlier, you jump on the track, someone won't even know who you are. They'll think it's a Drake song.
Yeah. So. And a lot of people like have short attention spans, so they're just like, okay, I heard this thing, and then I moved on from it, you know.
And they're not really a fan now, or a follower, right?
Yeah.
Is there any place also that you just get like inspiration from, or when you think about your music, like what comes first, like the look or the sound?
It's funny because I feel like they are so interconnected that they influence each other. So no matter what comes first, the other one follows. After. Like if I make a song and I listen back to it, the first thing I'm thinking about is like what I'm gonna wear, what I'm gonna wear when I'm performing this, like what I'm gonna wear when I'm in the music video, and then vice versa when I'm like putting on like a look, I'm always thinking about, okay, like what sound would I like. I think when I go into the studio and I'm dressed a certain way, it definitely like
impacts. Yeah. This is usually my brother's question, so but I have to ask you because it's literally a staple for our podcast. We call it tunnel talk. So like, what does Kari say to herself, right, when she's getting ready, she's about to have to like go in, or if it's a business meeting, right? Like, what do you say? Like, what's your tunnel talk to yourself?
Me and my boyfriend have this thing, this inside, because we're both like church kids. He's a PK and I came from a church family, and we always say like, you have to spread the gospel.
That's the.
So like whenever I'm about to do a show and I'm super nervous, he'd be like, you got to spread the gospel. And I'd be like, oh, you're right. Even today before I came here, he was like, I was like, oh, I'm so nervous. He said, you got to spread the gospel. I said, oh, you got me there. So it's like I have to go out there and like spread my message, and that's to be like, just be yourself, be authentic, like show up however you feel like you need to show up, because you never know like who's watching and who will be inspired by that. You know, so
that's super dope.
That's I'm always interested to hear what people's tunnel talk is, because like you're a human on one side and you go through a tunnel, you walk into a crowd, you have to perform, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
And it's a different human than like when you kicking it at home. And the process is, everyone does it differently.
Yeah. So. And then when you come out of it, sometimes you're like, man, did I just do
that?
Yeah.
You don't even realize.
Bike, right?
Yeah. You're like, oh, what? Okay.
Yeah. Like, let me go get some McDonald's now.
Watch that video back.
But no, before we close out, anything, final thoughts that you want to share with the listeners?
I just want to say that, you know, we're living in a crazy world right now, but I just want everybody to always like tap into their joy and keep that with you. We all I hope that we all care about what's going on in the world, but just always remember that like you have joy, you have love. Just look around you. There's people that love you. You know, keep your mind clear, keep your spirit clear. However you need to do that, whether you gotta take a walk, listen to some music, whatever, just you know, try to keep your peace, because like it's hard to do it in this day and age.
It's a lot of stuff going on. Kari, really appreciate you for making the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is
I love
dope.
your energy.
Thank you.
Keep everything so calm and cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So appreciate you being on the podcast.
All right, thank you. Thank you.